Ascent Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Tackle What's Next. Own your story, stack wins, and achieve your goals in business and life. By Eric Wood. Narrated by Eric Wood. Limit of liability, disclaimer of warranty. While the publisher and author have used their best efforts in preparing this book, they make no representations or warranties with respect to the accuracy or completeness of contents of this book, and specifically disclaim any implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. No warranty may be created or extended by sales representatives or written sales materials. The advice and strategies contained herein may not be suitable for your situation. You should consult with a professional where appropriate. Neither the publisher nor author shall be liable for any loss of profit or any other commercial damages, including but not limited to special, incidental, consequential, or other damages. To my wife, Leslie, and 2 kids, Grace and Garrett, for whom I strive to be a better man every day. Forward by Sean McDermott. When Eric told me he was writing a book about how to move on from big moments of transition, I knew he was the right man for the job. I first met him in 2017 after joining the Bills, and his reputation preceded him. The strength coach at the Carolina Panthers was a big fan of Eric and had worked with him at Louisville. He told me an impressive story about Eric lunging toward the finish line just so he could finish first in an off-season conditioning drill. He was just known as the guy who was always giving an all-out effort. And that's exactly what I saw when we began working together in Buffalo. Here was this outstanding and talented player who backed it up with preparation and work. Because of his approach to the game, I felt we were somewhat equally aligned early on in our time together. We had a similar approach, and I knew that this was a player who would help get us off the ground and help get us there to where we are today. The word process gets thrown out a lot in football, but that's because it's still the foundation of excellent performance. If you study peak performers in any industry, in particular sports, once they have a great process down, the day-by-day routine, which basically in our business is Monday through Saturday or the entire offseason, it sure makes things a lot easier come September through February. Those who stick to their process consistently give themselves the best chance to be peak performers in their line of work. Eric takes that process with a standard, that daily set of consistent actions, and applies it to every facet of his life. Off the field, he is a dedicated family man, a man of deep faith, and someone who committed a significant portion of his life and energy to charity and serving others. In 2017, Eric was on the team that helped break our 17-year drought. Unfortunately, his momentum was cut short because he was forced to retire early from football because of a physical issue. Yet he took that same approach of process and preparation to get him through the next big thing off the field. Retiring early can be rough on many players, yet he's done a remarkable job taking the next steps and applying that faithful day-to-day process to other parts of his life. I'm extremely proud of him and admire him for that. It's not easy to do. I've always thought Eric had a way of drawing people to him, no matter what he was doing. He was a connector of people off the field and on the field. One weekend he's at the Kentucky Derby, and the next he's announcing a game. He does college football games in the fall, and then he gives back to Louisville, where he's an important part of the community. And then, before you know it, he's announcing a Bills game up on a Sunday. Did I mention he has a wife and kids too? Put all those jobs together, how does he have time for that? Amazing. He has a lot on his shoulders, but it always seems like he balances it extremely well, which speaks to his days as a player. He's able to balance things in all these disparate interests in his life, which allows him to be a great leader. I know there are many people who struggle with major transitions in life. Take a page from Eric's playbook. Take a close look at your process and what you're doing every day. I know you'll be inspired by Eric's journey and adopt those basic principles that will lead to great success on your path. Preface. You're right where you need to be right now. The best day of your life is the one in which you decide your life is your own. No apologies or excuses. No one to rely on or blame. The gift is yours. It's an amazing journey, and you alone are responsible for the quality of it. Bob Moad. Now is the perfect time to get prepared for what's next. Whether you're riding on top of the world or having a rough time of it, or somewhere in between, you are perfectly positioned to make your what's next your best yet. No matter how comfortable or uncomfortable you are, or what the circumstances of your life might be, no matter where you are in the world or what you have done or not done, this is the perfect time to get prepared. If you're going through a rough transition in life right now, What if this is the perfect packaged discomfort to prod you to make a shift in your life to make things better? What if all this pain is fertilizer for your growth? What if all this confusion is just what the doctor ordered to get you to your next step? And what if I show you some tools that helped me to get to my next step when I was going through a rough transition myself? What if there was nothing wrong with you at all and that these bad circumstances are fuel to make you more extraordinary? Conversely, what if you're feeling pretty on top of your game and cruising through life right now? Maybe you're a sports fan or a big Bills fan and you happen to pick up this book. What if implementing the principles in this book can make your life even better, get you to places you only imagined, and help you achieve success in all the buckets of your life? What if you're only scratching the surface of what's possible for you? Either way, this book is for you. If this book is in your hands, you were meant to pick it up for a reason. You're right where you need to be right now, even though it may not make sense. I wrote this book to give you some proven tools to help prepare you for the next best chapter of your life. I believe God has great things in store for all of you. In 2017, when I started the football season, I was out to have the best season yet with the Buffalo Bills, and we did. At that point, I wasn't looking to make a change either. Yet life took an unexpected direction, and I was forced to change. I had to completely alter my perspective and take stock of what winning would look like from here on out and what it should take. The truth is, everyone can prepare to win in any endeavor, but not everyone does. To quote Jerry Rice, "Today I will do what others won't, so tomorrow I will do what others can't." Your day is today, and by following the principles of this book, your what's next will be your best yet. Chapter 1, The Pivot Point. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. Let me tell you about the most extraordinary football season of my life, a time where I felt that God was smiling on me and the sky was the limit in my career. It's strange thinking about that time now because what I didn't know then was it all would be over in an instant. First of all, I love professional football. I love everything about it. I love the competitiveness. I'm the most competitive person I know. The camaraderie, the teamwork, the discipline, the preparation, the intensity, the physicality of it. For me, it was part of the American dream to pursue something and be passionate about it, to be successful at something and go to try to be the very best you can be. Along with that, it was just so much fun and brought so much abundance to my family and to me. To play football as a profession has been one of the biggest blessings of my life. In 2009, I was a first-round draft pick by the Buffalo Bills. I played my entire 9-year career with the Bills, and they offered me an extended contract twice before my 9th season in the NFL. In my final year, on my second deal with the Bills, I contemplated what I wanted to do next. Should I stick around or should maybe hit free agency? The Bills had been really good to me, and I loved all those guys. They were some of the best, yet there was always the temptation to try something new, to challenge myself differently. What made the decision easy for me was that the Bills just hired Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, and I truly trusted their vision for the organization. I also couldn't imagine the Bills breaking the longest playoff drought in the NFL and me not be a part of it. I had put so much blood, sweat, and tears into playing for the Bills, and I needed to be there for when the tide turned and the Bills would be successful again. With my faith in the Bills secure, I signed a contract extension before my 9th season, the very special 2017 season. You see, the Buffalo Bills hadn't made it to the playoffs for 17 years, and we were going to be the winning team configuration to break that drought. That didn't seem like the way it would be at first. We traded away our most recent top picks that the previous regime had drafted, and many outsiders thought we were tanking. Tanking is when a team will intentionally have a bad season in order to get better draft picks and try to set the organization up for long-term success. Tanking is a nightmare for veterans on a team. Would I even be around by the time this team would be good enough to make the playoffs? Would I be cut or traded to ensure a losing season? Did I really want to take on the physicality of an NFL season when we had no shot at making the playoffs? Our leadership council met with Sean McDermott, and he was explaining that we were, in fact, not tanking. We were simply trying to build a team of players that had a certain type of DNA that would set the culture for long-term success, and Sean felt that this could also lead to success in the short term as well. Although it didn't make full sense to all of us in that meeting, we put our trust in the Bills front office that we were going to go out and be in a win-now mode. It turned out to be the perfect strategy, along with the exact right combination of players and leadership. After we had won our final game of the season against the Dolphins, we watched from the locker room as the Bengals beat the Ravens to send us to the playoffs. Professionally, that was one of the most joyful moments of my life. If you're curious, you can go on YouTube and watch our celebration. Life was good. I had already had my contract in place. My beautiful wife, Leslie, was in the late stages of pregnancy, about ready to pop with our second child. I figured that she, the kids, and I would be in Buffalo through year 11 at that point. We had a house up there, and we lived back and forth between Buffalo, New York, and Louisville, Kentucky. I felt unbelievably lucky to have so many blessings and positive things in my life all at once. Because my second child was so close to being born, I had an unusual attitude going into the Jacksonville game. We were either going to beat Jacksonville and move on into the second round of the playoffs, or we would lose the game and I would go on to witness the birth of my son. It was a win-win situation for me, something I wasn't used to feeling about possibly losing a big game. As I said, I'm very competitive. Our game was scheduled for a Sunday, and Leslie was being induced on Wednesday. We ended up losing in Jacksonville 10-3. All players must get an exit physical the day after the last game of the season. So we lost on Sunday, and then the team doctor wanted me to do an exit physical on Monday morning. So the season ends. I'm the only player on the team that played 100% of the snaps that year, which is pretty rare in the NFL because you could either be beating a team really bad and they pull the starters, or you could be losing by a ton and they pull the starters. Both had happened to me in previous years of my career. Also, injuries pop up all of the time when you would have to miss snaps, or your shoe could come untied to cause you to miss a play. I was an alternate for the Pro Bowl, and there were 2 centers in the playoffs, so the chances of me going to the Pro Bowl were pretty good. I was in a hurry to get out of Buffalo to catch the birth of my son, but the doctor insisted I get an MRI before I leave town. And I said, look, I'm good. I'm the only player who played all the snaps. Please send me home. I'm going to get out of here because I'm going to go catch the birth of my son. Well, you had these stingers this year, he said. Just go out and get an MRI on your neck. I didn't want to hear it. If you're unfamiliar with stingers, they're a common ailment suffered by football players in particular. It's a tingling feeling in the hand or arm resulting from a nerve injury in the neck or shoulder. If you've ever played high school football, chances are you or someone on your team had a stinger at least once. And that's precisely what I told the doctor. My buddies in high school had stingers. Why do I need to get an MRI for a stinger? The whole situation seemed ridiculous. But he said, it's kind of alarming that you never suffered a stinger until this season. So I gave in and got an MRI, hopped in my car, and drove back to Louisville as fast as I could to be with my wife for the birth of our son. I wouldn't get the MRI results right away, but I wasn't anxious about it. Honestly, that MRI was the furthest thing from my mind on that Wednesday. There I was, in the hospital room, about 50 minutes from my son being born, and I get the call. It was the call that ended my career. The MRI revealed that in my cervical column at points C2 and C3, I had disc and bone penetrating into my spinal cord. The doctors were not sure why or how I wasn't laying motionless on the football field, but that's what the MRI indicated should have happened to cause this. They told me this injury meant I could no longer play football. I thought, how could this be? At first, I was in complete denial. I brought up that Peyton Manning had a neck fusion. Why couldn't I? I found myself thinking there must be some way out, like, is there any way we can make this surgery work? I found out later that Manning's neck fusion was lower in his spine. Everything is less stable towards the top, and when you hurt your spinal cord, it affects everything below it. C2 and C3 are too high on the spinal column due to the same kind of fusion procedure. The doctors told me I was lucky I wasn't more affected by the injury than I was with only the stingers. They told me I was fortunate just to have walked away from the field. They also said that even though there was a chance at a successful surgery, I would never pass a football physical again. So this situation was serious. The doctor stressed that if I got hit the wrong way with this kind of injury, I could be a paraplegic and lose my ability to breathe on my own without machines. And that hit really close to home. You see, my little brother Evan was born with severe cerebral palsy. He never walked, talked, or breathed on his own. I saw firsthand what that looked like. He fought and lived for 11 years, and it was hard to watch him struggle. I was 14 when he passed. And so to get that news and be able to picture myself in my brother and what could have happened, well, that was a little intense for me. I was at the crossroads of grateful it's not worse, but also devastated that I had to face this. I got the news that my career was over, and it just shocked me. I know that it happens to a lot of guys, but honestly, at that moment, I just felt cheated because I felt like I had put in so much work to that point. I mean, I had so much joy on a day-to-day basis in that facility. I was the captain for 3 years, and it should have been 5. Rex Ryan, the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, doesn't do captains. He does game captains. So instead of having the gold patch on my jersey signifying 5+ years of being captain with the same team, I only had 3 stars filled in. That's okay, though. I loved playing for Rex Ryan. Honestly, I loved everything about playing professional football. I did love my role. I loved the platform it gave me too. I was using my platform to bring people into my men's group at church during the off season. I was bringing people closer to their faith, closer to God. I was playing with a lot of freedom as well, just knowing that, hey, I can give it all I got and I don't have to be ashamed. And I wanted that Super Bowl. I was so looking forward to making playoff runs. I was also going to miss Buffalo terribly, a great city that had welcomed me with open arms and I had come to know and love. I loved it all, and at that moment, I was totally crushed. It was just a roller coaster of emotion because my son was about to be born. I told my wife the news and she started to cry. A nurse came in and said to her, honey, it's not going to hurt that bad. And she said, it's not about the baby. We laughed about that later, but at that time, it was far from funny for anyone in the room. My son was born 50 minutes later, and it was such an immense rush of joy, such a distraction from the previous moment. It was a tremendous gift he came when he did, because I think his arrival at that moment helped me process what was happening in the big picture. I had this incredible blessing of the son. However, I also had one of the top neurological doctors in the country telling me I would never play football again. Later, I would get 8 more second opinions from neurologists. They all agreed. It was one significant scary change accompanied by a huge joyful change. So for me, I hit that pivot point. I'll explain what I mean. For the Buffalo Bills, I played the center position, often known as the pivot because of its central location on the field. The center is in the middle of the offensive formation. Because he starts the play with the ball, the offensive formation is dictated by where the center lines up. Some may say it's the most pivotal position on the football field because without a clean snap to the quarterback, the play has no chance for success. Or maybe that's just how a former center sees it. In that sense, the word pivot is being used as a noun. It is the central place on the field. The pivot of a city is often the metropolitan area around which all of the rest of the city revolves. The pivot of a house is usually the kitchen, from which all of the other rooms of the house flow. The pivot of an organization would be the leader, from which all the decisions are made or pass through. Then there's the pivot that requires action. I've had my share of experiences in this brand of pivoting, both on and off the football field. But this was the most significant pivot of my life, ending my ability to play football forever. I was forced to pivot in my entire career and from a lifestyle that I was very accustomed to living. It wasn't like I hit rock bottom at that moment. It took a while. It took some days of anxiety trying to figure out what I was all about moving forward and how I would proceed. All of my eggs were in one basket career-wise. My whole life was football, and I was absolutely all in. I didn't have a next career lined up by any means. But when you hit that pivot point, there are some action steps that you need to take personally. Along with that came a lot of personal development work and consciously working on my inner game and how I look at and function in life. Those steps didn't come all at once for me. Looking back, it wasn't like I got out of the league and suddenly I had an epiphany or this blueprint of what to do. I got a lot of good advice from incredible people, and I've seen in practice what works firsthand. One thing that worked in my favor is the way I'm wired. I'm always thinking, what's next? How can I make my future bigger than my past? I just know that whatever is happening was going to happen for a reason. I also had tremendous faith that God had something planned for me. Like he could help me take this dramatic event in my life and show me something exceptional that I could do with it. I just wasn't sure what that was yet. But I knew that he had plans for me and would help me prosper. I knew that I had hope in the future and that he could help me make this into a blessing. Now, I got a lot of help in the aftermath of my forced retirement. I hit a point of obscurity for the first time in a long time because the Bills hadn't officially released me, so I couldn't go out and get a job. National media members have reached out, and I appreciate all of their help in my transition. They wanted to help me get into the sports broadcast business. But I couldn't even accept a job until June because of my contract with the Bills. By that time, all of the broadcast crews were filled for the upcoming season. Sports broadcasting is a natural transition for many athletes who retire. They want to get into the media world because for most of us, that's all we have known for a significant part of our lives. But you have to do it right away because if you wait a few years and you're an offensive lineman who played in Western New York, they're going to say, "Who are you again?" And so I wanted to give it a shot, but I couldn't even go out and try to get a job. It wasn't like Monday Night Football came calling, but the help from so many individuals led me to be a color analyst for the Buffalo Bills radio broadcast, as well as an analyst for ESPN and ACC Network. I've also been fortunate because I've been able to create a new platform through my podcast, What's Next with Eric Wood. In the beginning, I looked at it as a medium to interview other athletes and talk about football and my time with the Bills. But as time went on, the scope became so much more vast. I found myself interviewing people who had fantastic advice to offer on how to lead more effective and impactful life. People who had all faced a pivot point moment of their own and made it work for them. Spending time with all those people began to shift my thinking and change my life for the better as well. Our new tagline became interviews that impact and inspire. My podcast guests were changing lives, including mine, and I could use my platform to amplify their message. I find such joy in serving and uplifting others, and my show has become a vital part of that for me. I may have never connected with so many inspirational and transformative people had my life gone exactly the way I expected. On top of all this, amid my transition, barely 2 years retired from the NFL, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Suddenly, millions of others were experiencing a dramatic pivot point themselves in the aftermath. Many of them did not have the tools they need to process it or know exactly how they were going to pivot. So many felt like they'd had the rug pulled out from under them. And the ancillary effects of this pandemic are going to be felt for years down the line. Countless people are hanging on by a thread financially, or worse, have lost loved ones, or both. How do you pivot from those moments? That's part of why I decided I needed to write this book now. The principles I write about are incredibly useful in practically any situation where you find yourself in the middle of a big transition. It doesn't have to be a global pandemic or disaster. It could be anything from moving on to a new place or getting married for the first time, starting a new career, becoming a parent, dealing with a loss, or any variety of crossroads. Maybe you just want to be more effective at what you already are doing or bring more abundance into your life. Think of each chapter as a different play in a playbook. The top strategies I've found so far for getting you to your personal what's next. The principles or plays work best when done in combination with all the others. I can't take credit for all the ideas. So many of these words of wisdom have been passed down through generations in multiple forms. I always believed in taking advice from those further along in their journey in life. In football, one of the most valuable things to do when you enter the NFL is to find a veteran on the team and emulate his daily habits and routines. As I transition to my next chapter, those referenced in this book taught me and will teach you so many valuable lessons that you can implement to enhance your life. I'm putting my particular spin on it in a way that I hope you'll find accessible. One of my greatest gifts that I'm learning to own is my ability to connect with others, and I want you to feel that you're getting practical support from me in a way that can help you get the things you want in your life. I genuinely do want to serve you and uplift you to more extraordinary things. Unlike an actual football playbook, there are not nearly as many plays to remember. Once you start using them, they will become second nature. However, similar to an actual playbook, all the plays require diligent practice. All the concepts are not complicated, but you must act on them to get any benefit. Just like out on the field, you will naturally be better at some plays than others, so don't be discouraged if a few take time to become habits. I've learned so much over the past few years from my journey and my incredible podcast guests. When I'm sharing a little nugget of wisdom from them, I'll be sure to point out who said it so you can dig deeper into their way of thinking as well. Once you go down the rabbit hole of inspiration, you may notice a positive ripple effect on your life sooner than you expect. I believe God has a plan for us, and part of my plan is to help others step into their greatness. When you transform yourself, you improve the lives of everyone around you. Your what's next may inspire and change those closest to you in ways that you can't imagine. Whatever is going on in your life, just remember your future is so much bigger than your past. Let me serve you and help you embrace it. Chapter 2. Examine your gifts. Your talent is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift back to God. Leo Biscaglia. When you find yourself down, disappointed that you have arrived at a place you've never thought you'd be, it's easy to live in despair. Taking a look around, it can seem like everything is against you and your luck has run out. My first instinct is to reach out to you and suggest that you're not starting from zero. Wherever you are in life, you've merely reached a transition point where you are moving from one way of life to the next. Choose to use your adversity to propel you upward. You're here on earth with a full slate of natural gifts that you've used all your life, gifts that will continue to serve you as you get to the next step. If you're having a hard time imagining what those gifts are, it might be because you use them instinctively without thinking about them. Something else that often happens when you find yourself down is that you have trouble seeing your attributes and resources. You have more tools in your utility belt than you give yourself credit for. Trust me, I was exactly in the same boat. When I hit my period of transition between when my football career had abruptly ended and I had not yet found a new direction, I was experiencing a gap. It was a period of not knowing, and after years and years of rigid physical discipline, I was uncertain of what exactly I was supposed to do and where I was supposed to go. Though I had faith that I would find out, I didn't yet have the answers at my fingertips. It was just a lot of big questions. I would wake up in the morning and think, okay, what the heck am I going to do next? I meant that in two ways. One was the broad figurative sense, as in, where am I going with my life? But I also meant it in the day-by-day sense, as in, what the heck am I going to do after breakfast? Sometimes it was the smaller question that was hard to answer. When I was training in the NFL, I had accounted for almost every minute of my day. What and when I ate, how often I worked out and when, and what weight I needed to be. I was on autopilot in a good way. Every single thing that I did in my daily schedule was to help me be the best that I could to be a professional football player. From that directive, my daily schedule trickled down to what I would be doing every minute of the day. Well, I couldn't play football anymore. So for me, the first step after asking myself what I was going to do meant taking football out of the equation and taking a detailed look at who I was on a deep level. To answer that question, I had to begin with examining my gifts. As luck would have it, I started working with an executive coach months before my pivot point and forced retirement. If you've never worked with an executive coach, a good way of looking at it is someone similar to an athletic coach, but for your business and life goals. Someone to help you make the right plays in life, go over the metaphorical game tape, and give you feedback that will help you get to where you want to go. My coach's name is James McParland, but to his high-level clients and me, he just goes by Mac. A teammate of mine was getting reinstated back in the NFL. As a condition, they wanted him to work with a therapist. Mac wasn't precisely a therapist. However, in terms of the impact he had on other people's lives, one could argue that he was an equivalent. I served as my teammate's accountability partner and eyes on the ground for Mac. So Mac and I would talk once a month for maybe 20 minutes. I was basically confirming that my teammate was doing everything on the straight and narrow, and he was. I was a bit new to this, and I liked the results I saw from my teammate regarding his overall life improvement. I was curious about this whole coaching process. So I started professional executive coaching 6 months prior to my career ending, even though I didn't know it was about to end. I was glad I was working with him beforehand to help me get into the right mindset when my big transition did come. One of the first things Mac asked me to do was to examine what my gifts were. He started with a list of questions to help me discover them. Now, these aren't the only questions you can ask yourself to start finding your gifts, but they are great questions. The first was basic and intuitive. Question 1. What are you good at naturally? This question was tricky because I felt one of my most significant gifts was one I wasn't allowed to use anymore. My natural athletic ability and my God-given shape and size. Now, I know some of that's developed through weight training and drills, but my little brother is 5'10" and 175 pounds. By contrast, I was gifted a body that could be an NFL center. I could be deadly on the field. If I couldn't use that body the same way I've trained it, how could that translate into something else? That was a great place to start. I've been a natural athlete for as long as I can remember. I grew up in a huge neighborhood with tons of kids. I could probably ride my bike for a mile without ever running into a main road. We'd play roller hockey, basketball, whatever it was, and we got after it. Even as a kid, I wanted to win no matter what we were playing. We developed skills and competitive spirit that I sometimes worry my kids won't get growing up in a smaller neighborhood without many young kids. And there was one of my gifts right there, a competitive spirit. Even if you took away all of my athletic ability, even if I were in a wheelchair, I would still have that natural competitiveness. I always want to be the best at whatever I'm doing, which pushes me and can serve me no matter what career path I choose from here on out. If I pick up something new that I think is worthwhile, I always want to learn faster and excel. Question 2. What have you learned to do well? This question is my new personal variation on the first question that Mac asked me. Sometimes we learn to be very good at something that started as a natural knack or talent and honed it into something special. I've always felt that I was a good communicator, but it was my training in football that took that skill from good to great. When you're a center, a lot of what you do is communicating to other players in real time. So much happens very quickly. Sometimes I found myself in third and long situations. The defense was moving, and I had to give everybody on the offense blocking assignments to counteract these experienced, genius defensive coordinators' plans. It's not easy either, because sometimes you've seen the plays or something similar only on film, but they're actually going to run another defensive scheme in disguise, which confuses you. So I would be trying to get everyone on the same page in about 10 seconds, and I would still have to do my job of snapping the football and then block an elite defender. As a long-tenured veteran for the Bills, I was communicating as a mouthpiece for the organization and for the players on my team. You have to be good at getting the right messages across. The last thing you want to do is embarrass the team or say something that just wasn't accurate. You also want to do much more than that. You want to inspire and represent the best of what your team has to offer. Playing in the NFL also forces you to get used to answering questions in front of a camera. Whether it is after...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?